Have you ever had one of those moments? A profound shift inside of you, a change so deep that you just couldn't find the words for it? Well, in this explainer, we're going to explore how humanity has spent centuries using a universal language to map these invisible transformations. And that language, it's the Earth itself. I mean, think about it for a second. It's a pretty wild question, right? The biggest events in our lives, a sudden flash of insight, a total change of heart, they're completely invisible. So how do we give them shape? How do we even begin to talk about them in a way that feels real? And yeah, that's the real challenge. Our vocabulary for our own inner lives feels, well, incomplete. Trying to explain a feeling of deep peace or a sudden burst of creativity, it's like trying to catch mist in your hands. You know it's there, but you just can't quite hold on to it. So what do you do when your own language just doesn't cut it? Well, for centuries, we've done something pretty incredible. We've turned to the language of the land. We've taken our inner journeys and literally projected them onto the physical world, using mountains, deserts, and rivers as a kind of visible alphabet for the soul. So where do we even begin with this cartography of the soul? A lot of the time, it starts just by looking up. So let's start with our first great symbol, the mountain. You know, in just about every culture, the simple act of looking at a mountain, it makes you feel something, doesn't it? A sense of striving, of reaching for something higher. The great historian of religion, Mircea Eliade, who basically spent his entire life studying these symbols, he just put it perfectly. He saw mountains as this kind of threshold, a place where our world touches another. And because of that, the physical act of climbing, the struggle, the sheer effort, it becomes this powerful metaphor for our own spiritual climb. Okay, so this slide has a really cool term, axis mundi. It's this ancient idea of a world center. Think of it like a cosmic pillar connecting heaven and earth. And once you know about it, you start seeing it everywhere, from world trees and Norse myths to the spires on huge cathedrals. But mountains are the original axis mundi. They are the natural cathedrals of our planet, places where big revelations feel not just possible, but almost inevitable. But here's a thought that we often miss. Reaching the summit, that's only half the journey. The real test, the true transformation, actually happens on the way down. Can you carry that mountaintop clarity back into the messy, busy, complicated valley of your everyday life? See, the ascent might give you the revelation, but it's the descent that turns it into real wisdom. Okay, so if the mountain is all about reaching up, what about a landscape that stretches out, seemingly forever? Let's switch gears from the vertical to the horizontal, from the journey of ascent to the journey into the vast, stark emptiness of the desert. And this slide just nails the contrast. The mountain journey is all about expansion, right? Your perspective grows as you climb higher, your self becomes more. But the desert is about subtraction. It's a landscape that strips you bare. It forces you to shed everything that isn't absolutely essential until all that's left is the very core of who you are. You know, this process of becoming less actually has a name in the Sufi tradition, fana, which means annihilation. Now, that sounds intense, but it's not about self-destruction. It's about quieting the ego, that noisy, demanding part of us, so that something much larger can finally be heard. The immense silence of the desert becomes the perfect classroom for that kind of deep listening. The Christian mystics, the ones who fled to the desert centuries ago, they understood this on a profound level. They had this saying, "Go, sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything." And that outer cell, that simple little hut, it was really just a tool to help them find their inner cell, that quiet space inside where, once you're free from all the distractions, you finally get to meet yourself. So we've explored places of incredible stillness, the mountain and the desert. But what if the transformation isn't found in a place at all, but in the actual act of moving? What if the journey itself is the real destination? This brings us to the incredible power of the pilgrimage. Think of a pilgrimage like this. As your feet are moving across the land, something inside of you is moving too. Every single step forward in the outer world is also a step inward. Your physical journey becomes a living, breathing metaphor for your inner journey, written on the landscape with your own 2 feet. The anthropologist Victor Turner had this really beautiful way of describing this whole thing. He called it the pilgrim's ellipse. You leave home, you travel to some kind of sacred center, a temple, a shrine, a natural wonder, and then you come back. But here's the magic trick. The road home is never the same as the road you took to get there, because the person who returns is not the same person who left. You've been changed by the journey. And this brings us to one of the most magical ideas in this whole cartography of the soul, the idea of hidden places. Think of them like secret levels in the game of life. Places that might be on a map, but they're basically invisible to you unless you're ready. You can't find them with a compass, you can only find them with the right state of mind. Now get this, on one side you have Shambhala from Tibetan Buddhism, a hidden kingdom you can only find when you've dealt with your own inner demons. And on the other, you've got the interior castle from the 16th century Christian mystic Saint Teresa of Avila, a castle made of diamond at the center of your soul, guarded by your own fears and attachments. Two totally different worlds, centuries apart, but they have the exact same insight. The key to these hidden places isn't on a map, it's inside you.
And here it is. This is the heart of it all. As St. Teresa wrote so beautifully, this magnificent refuge, it's already inside you. The whole journey, climbing the mountain, trekking across the desert, the long road of the pilgrimage, it was never really about reaching a destination out there. It was always about preparing you to finally come home to yourself.
So, if our inner worlds can be mapped out like this, what does that say about the maps we use for our outer world? It's a really fascinating question because the way we map the Earth has changed so dramatically over time, and that change, it tells a story about us. See, for most of human history, maps weren't really about accuracy. They were about meaning. They were cosmic diagrams with sacred places, the axis mundi, right in the center. But then something shifted. We invented longitude and latitude, and our maps became maps of measurement, these precise grids. We gained a new kind of power over the world, for sure, but maybe we lost something too. We traded that sacred center for the grid. And yet, that ancient way of seeing the world never totally disappeared. There's actually a pretty new field called terrace psychology that's rediscovering this deep link between our inner and outer worlds. It asks questions like, what's the personality of this landscape? Or how does the soul of a place get into our own souls? It's a modern science that is, in a way, learning to speak that ancient language of the earth all over again. And that leaves us with this beautiful, simple truth. Maps were mirrors long before they were ever measurements. They weren't just tools for navigating the world, but for navigating the soul. And maybe, just maybe, if we learn to look at them in that old way again, they can still show us not just where we are, but who we might still become.